Hello, everyone. Welcome to the another session into our AWS series. Today, we're going to talk about Amazon's Elastic Beanstalk. I'm diverting the series a little bit towards some of the development tools and some of the environment. One of the reason I promised to help someone with some Docker deployment, but to really understand the Docker deployment was necessary. It's good to understand the Elastic Beanstalk. So, and for the same reason, I was unable to put together some slide today. So I'll be using some of Amazon's reference document to talk about Elastic Beanstalk, and then I'll promise you I'll walk you through a good exercise. That way you will get a good understanding of Elastic Beanstalk. So let's understand what exactly is Amazon Elastic Beanstalk. So Amazon Elastic Beanstalk is an easier way for you to quickly deploy and manage applications in your AWS cloud. So when I say application, take an example. You have a website. So you have a development team that comes and say, hey, we are developing a website in Tomcat or a PHP with MySQL. Can you go ahead and provision the infrastructure for us? So that means you will go ahead and install a flavor of Linux depending on the requirement. It could be anything Red Hat, Ubuntu, or there are so many things out there. Once that is done, probably if you're doing a lamp stack based application, you will go ahead and install lamp stack on that your VM. If you're doing a Ruby on Rails development, probably will go ahead and install Ruby gems and Ruby, and you get the idea. So you have to go and configure VMs, and then probably on top of that install the rest of the things to support the need for that application. So it used to take some time, and that's not the only thing. And if there is a need that grows, that hey, okay, I have configured one server, and now we are planning to put under production. And that time we think, okay, we are running out of resources probably, so we have to repeat the exercise. Go ahead and create some more VMs, do the same process of installing Ruby or PHP or whatever things that you are using for your application. So that used to take quite a big cycle. So that's the whole idea that Elastic Beanstalk. So you just simply create your application and upload your application. On the back end, the Elastic Beanstalk automatically handles the deployment details. So that could be your capacity provisioning, load balancing, auto scaling, your health monitoring. At the same time, Beanstalk, with Elastic Beanstalk, you retain full control of the AWS resources. You can do pretty much anything with your resources. Elastic Beanstalk takes advantage of all your existing AWS services, like your EC2 instance, your S3 storage, your simple notification services, load balancing, auto scaling. And as I said, the good thing, you don't have to worry how many instances do I need to spin up? Do I have to go install manually PHP, MySQL, or do I need to go ahead and install Ruby? Elastic Beanstalk automatically takes care of those requirements for you. Right now, there is a good number of environments supported by AWS. So there is a pretty good list out there. You can develop your application in simple. You can have a Node.js, PHP, Python, Ruby, .NET, Apache Tomcat, Java. Some of the things that you can use. So hopefully you get a good idea. What are we trying to do here? What's the use case for the Elastic Beanstalk? As you can say, the AWS Elastic Beanstalk is an easy to use service for deploying and scaling web applications and the services developed with Java, .NET, PHP, Node.js, Ruby, Python, Go, and there is a quite a good list out here. And again, there is no additional charges for Elastic Beanstalk. You pay only for the AWS resources. So in this case, it could be your EC2 instance, Elastic Load Balancer, and some other things. There are a lot of benefits. It's a fast and simple to begin. As I said, you don't have to really worry about it. It's very good in terms of the developer productivity. Impossible to outgrow again because it's using the auto scaling, so you can configure different matrices like we have done in the past. And again, the good thing is that you have a complete control over your resources. So when I say resources, your Amazon EC2 instance, or your Elastic Load Balancer. If you decide to make some changes, you can definitely go ahead do that without any problem. So that's the whole idea about the Amazon's Elastic Beanstalk. So let me go ahead and switch it to our Amazon's Management Console. So under Amazon Management Console, under Compute, you have Elastic Beanstalk, which says Run and Manage the Web Apps. So just simply go ahead and click on Elastic Beanstalk over here. Let me zoom a little bit here, so it's easy. So it says, welcome to Elastic Beanstalk. With Elastic Beanstalk, you can deploy, monitor, and scale an application quickly and easily. So there are a few things to deploy your existing web application, create an application source bundle, and then create a new application. To deploy a sample application, just one click, select a platform, and launch now. So there are different platforms, like as we discussed earlier. There are something pre-configured: Java, Node.js, PHP, Python, Ruby. There is a good support for Docker also, so you can have a generic Docker, a single container, or you can have multi-container Docker too. So uh, I promised someone that I'll help them with one of their Docker issue where they're trying to port their application running on EC2 to Docker. So that was the whole idea before we really jump into the Docker and porting this application. It was good to understand the use case for the Elastic Beanstalk. So in this exercise or in this demo, I will show you how it is easy to deploy your application. So I have two of my application. One is written in PHP and another written in Ruby. The Ruby applications uses the database on the backend to store some of the information, while the PHP application is just a PHP application. But you can go ahead and do a database integration also. I will show you how you can do that too during this demo. So once you're on the Elastic Beanstalk page, let me just show you something pretty quick. Go back to services, go back to your EC2 here, and just to make sure that we don't have anything. So you can see that I don't have any running instances on my EC2. Similar, let's go back to your RDS. Under RDS is our relational database services, and just to make sure that we don't have any. Okay, so there are no databases instance, as of right now running. So which is good. Let's go back to under services. Go back to Elastic Beanstalk, and just simply go ahead and click create a new application. Give it your application name. I'm going to call it my Ruby app. You can give it a name, my Ruby app. Just simply go ahead and click next. It started to create. So there are different things that you can do. You can have worker environment and web server environment. In our case, we're using a web server environment. So just simply go ahead and click. Just to pay attention here, with on Elastic Beanstalk web server in either a single instance or multi-balance load balancing auto scaling. So you have option just to when initially start. Maybe if you're testing something, you can use a single instance. Then you can go ahead and deploy your application, make sure everything looks good, everything is working fine, and now it's time to put it into production. You can go ahead and make the changes from single instance to load balancing and auto scaling. That way you don't have to worry about redeploying the application or recreating the environment manually again. And I will show you that during this demo also. So simply go ahead and click on create web server. And now go ahead and select the platform in this case. So in this case, the first application I'm deploying is a Ruby application. Now, once I select the Ruby as my platform, it automatically selects the your Ruby version and the Linux that is running. But this Ruby application is written in version 1.1. So I'm going to change my version from 2.2. So it's very simple. Go click here, change platform version, and select the version. So the my Ruby application is done in 1.93. So I'll go ahead and select that one. And the environment type, as we discussed, we'll go ahead and simply start with a single instance. Later on, we'll go ahead and use the load scaling, load balancing, and auto scaling to scale our application. Hopefully, you get an idea here. Just simply go ahead and click on next here. Now it's asking for the path. So in this case, I have application. I'm going to upload my application. So I'll just simply go ahead and click on upload your own. I'll go ahead and choose the application. Give me a second, guys. Okay, I went ahead and selected my sample application. If you look at a deployment limit, we have set only one instance, and based on the percentage and on some of the other things, so just simply go ahead and click next here. It started doing uploading. It's asking for an environment name. I'm just going to call my environment my Ruby app one. You can just make sure that this environment URL or this DNS record is unique. No one else is using. Keyword description. I'll use call it my Ruby app, and once that is done, simply go ahead and click next. Now, as I mentioned earlier, that my Ruby app that I've designed, it make uses of the database in the back end. So there are different options that you can do with Elastic Beanstalk and RDS-DB instance, or even you can create a VPC environment. So I'm just going to go ahead and make use of my RDS-DB. So just simply go ahead and click on this one. These are the details for your RDS instance type T1 micro. So I'm going to go ahead and change it to T2 micro here. I don't have to. If you want to log into your RDS instance, you can go ahead and select your SSH key pair. In my case, I don't want to do that. Simply, you don't have to do this. Then just leave rest of the things to edit defaults. And there are good documentation out there. You can read about some of these different settings, root volumes, and the container default SSD. I'm not specifying any size. So just somebody you can modify if you need to. Just simply go ahead and click next over here. You can give your environment a tag if you need to. I'm skipping that for the time being. Now this is the configuration for your RDS. So the database engine we are using is MySQL. There are different options that you can use: MySQL, PostgreSQL. So I'm good with MySQL. This is your DB version. In this case, I'm using 5627. You can change that one. Again, with your instance class, you can change the instance of your RDS or your DB instance. So in this case, I'm going to change it from T1 micro to T2 micro. Give it a username and password. So the application can make use of this user and password to connect to database and then create the needy tables and then store the data. I'm just going to call it my just call it Ruby app and enter your password. Retention setting, if you see there are two options, create and delete. So what does it say is that terminating your environment can permanently delete your Amazon RDS database instance and its all its data. By default, AWS Elastic Beanstalk saves a snapshot, which preserves your data but may incur backup storage charges. So that means if you are terminating this application and you want to make sure that your data remains intact, you can create a snapshot, or if you don't want, you can go ahead and just choose the option delete. I'm going to leave it to create snapshot. Again, you can have a single availability zone, multiple availability zone. For our demo, I'm just going to stick to single availability zone and just simply go ahead and click next. Instance profile and service role. So what it says, an instance profile is an IAM role configured for use with EC2 instance. The instance is in your Elastic Beanstalk. Use the credential provided by the instance profile to communicate with AWS resources. So if you guys recall the roles and profiles, so that's what we are creating them. So we are just creating new because we don't have any of these things created already. And once we do that, the Elastic Beanstalk will take care of creating all the needed things for us. So just simply go ahead and click next. And as you can see, these are some of the things. Let's go back and look at the permissions, and you can see that the Elastic Beanstalk has created automatically an instance profile and service role. And if everything looks good, just simply go ahead and click launch. So it started to validate your environment settings, and just give it a few more minutes. Okay, and as you can see, it started to bring up your Ruby application. It's giving you some of the details, and it says Elastic Beanstalk is now creating your environment. And you can see some of the recent events started to create like an S3 bucket for storing your environment data. You can look at some of the logs. You can go under the events tab just to see how things are looking. You can again monitor some of the things, but we'll wait for our application to get deployed. And you see there is a URL already being published for our application. So you can just simply go ahead and click on this URL and you will be connected to our application. So we need to wait for this to get deployed. So uh, that was pretty much, with the Elastic Beanstalk. Now what's happening in the background, this Elastic Beanstalk is going to create an EC2 instance. It's going to go ahead and install the Ruby version that we need. It's going to go ahead and create a database instance. It's going to go ahead and create a database for us. And then it's going to go deploy our Ruby app on our EC2 instance. And once that is done, it's going to connect our Ruby app to our RDS. So that's all is happening in the back end, guys. So while this is running, let's go ahead and deploy another application just to be, repeat the process one more time, and you can see how easy it is to deploy a different environment and different applications. And as you can see, before we jump, it says started, created RDS database security group, created auto scaling launch configuration. If you recall that we can have one instance or we can have multiple. Elastic Beanstalk automatically provisions, but later on you can change. So it says creating RDS database named 770. So if you go under services and look at the RDS, so now it says there's a 1 DB instance. If you click on this DB instance, you can see 770, and it's right now it's creating. So let it run. Let's go back to Elastic Beanstalk, guys. And as you can see, this is one of my application. We call that my Ruby app. Ruby app 1. You can click on this one, give us some details. So let's go ahead and create another application here. So create a new application. I'm going to call PHP app, my PHP app, and just simply go ahead and click on next here. Again, web server here. Select a platform. In this case, I'm using PHP. Good with the new version. Again, I'm starting with a single instance. Just simply go ahead and click next. Let me go ahead and upload my PHP application. So I've selected my PHP application. Give it an environment name, my PHP app. Make sure this name is unique. Okay, my PHP app, and then simply go ahead and click on next here. My application is not making use of the database as of right now, but you can later on I can show you how to do that. It's pretty easy. So I'm not going to go ahead and select anything here for this application. Just simply go ahead and click next. Again, this is the instance type detail for the instance that you're going to deploy to host your PHP applications. I'm changing it to micro. I don't want to log in, so I'm just leaving some of these things to default. Again, health reporting, you can change basic and hence. Simply go ahead and click next. Not supplying any tags as of right now. And again, going back to the permissions, so if you see, we can make use of our existing permissions. So basically, we don't have to recreate, or we can reuse our existing instance profile and service roles. Go ahead and click next. Make sure everything looks good the way you wanted, and just simply go ahead and click on launch. That's okay, guys. Can give it a few minutes and we'll be good. And you can see it started to work on our PHP side. Now you can go back to the Ruby and look at how we are into this one process. You can go back to the events and look how things are looking right now. It's creating an RDS database. And so let's go back and look at how our database is doing right now. Welcome the database instance, and it's right now it's still creating. You can click on this to see some more details. Database instance is creating. It's not multi-zone. The username is Ruby app. These are some of the version security group. If you want to get some more details, you can right click and just simply click on see details. And here at the bottom, you will get to see that, okay, the Ruby app one is the one who is consuming this particular database. So give it some time, and this is going to launch our RDS instance for our Ruby app. And if you go back to the services and click on the EC2, we'll see if it has started to launch our, nope, still the application. Okay, you can see it has started to launch our first instance for our Ruby app. So give it some time, guys. And once that is done, you will have your environment up and running. So let's go back to your Ruby app, and let's wait for some more time. And while this is going on, we can go ahead and explore some of the other options. So if you click on the configuration tab, it shows your scaling environment or details, your instance details, some of the software configuration. I'll show you how to make change, your database tier information, your network load balancing, some of VPC information. And again, if you need to make some changes, you can go ahead and simply click here and make certain changes. Let's go back to the health. There's nothing. We'll get to see once the server is up and running. Click on monitoring. As of right now, there's no data because we are still waiting for application to be deployed. If there are any alarms, you will get to see them here. Under events, you can see what's going on. And it's still processing. If there was any tag that we had created, configured, these are some of the tags, and those got created automatically for us. So let's go back to the dashboard and give it some time. We can have a look at our PHP app. So it's waiting for EC2 instance to launch. This may take a few minutes. The reason the PHP app may be a little faster because there is no requirement for any database instance or anything. It's just going to go ahead and launch our EC2 instance and install the needed stuff for our application to be deployed. So it has added instance 7.2 to our environment. So we can go back and look at our EC2 instance 7.2, click on EC2, and go back and click here. And as you can see, this is our 7.2, and the name is my PHP app. And let's go ahead and see if we can see if our application is deployed. I'm going directly via my EC2 instance DNS. We can browse the same via our application URL also. So let's go ahead and have a look here. I know it's still taking time, so let's go back and have a look. So it's still running, guys. It's going to take a few minutes. So I'm going to leave it running like this for some time, and we'll come back once these applications are fully deployed. So just bear with me for a couple of minutes, and it should be done pretty anytime soon. Okay, guys, as you can see, the database was created right now. It's doing a backup, and if you recall, during the Elastic Beanstalk, we had an option of a create a snapshot or a delete. So right now, that's what it's doing. It's creating a snapshot in case if we delete this. So give it a few more minutes. Once the backing up is done, we'll have our database up and running. So while this is going on, let me just do something here. So once your database instance is deployed, let's say if you wanted to later on utilize, hey, my PHP application needs a database on the back end, or I need to make the database. So you can simply go ahead and create a launch a database instance. I'll show you in another lab more details about the RDS, but you can go ahead and launch a database instance and configure some of the details. Once your database instance or your instance is up and running, you are presented with endpoint, which is a URL. If you've been doing development, like for your application, for your database, either you will specify a host name or an IP address to connect to that MySQL or some other database server. In our case, it's a MySQL. So this is the host name or IP address to connect to this MySQL instance, which is known as the endpoint. It's running on this particular port. This is the username and the password that you gave during the creation of your MySQL instance in this case. So these are the things. Now, once your PHP application is deployed and you decided to connect your database, it's a pretty easy, like the way you do with any other coding thing. You can use the MySQL Connect method, and there you can specify in the host name your this endpoint is the URL, and then followed by username, password, and some of the other things. Let me just quickly show that to you guys. Give me a second. So there is a pretty good documentation out there again on Amazon's website, like that says like using Amazon RDS with PHP. As I said, later on you decide to make use of that one, so you can go ahead and create an RDS in a DB instance, and there are different ways if you want to use your PDO drivers. This is how we would connect. And simple thing, you can use MySQL Connect method now to connect. So you go back into your PHP application, and there's something in code. So in the server, RDS, host name, server, and some of these details you can go ahead and configure into this one. So that would be something like this in real example. So we'll go ahead and use your endpoint IP address, and then your username, password, your database, and then the port. So hopefully you get an idea that it's pretty easy even to make changes to your existing applications, and you can do that way you can make use of database if you decide to. As like in our case, initially when we started our PHP application, we are not using database, but you get the idea. You can go ahead and create a new instance and then use your PHP syntax to connect to your MySQL database, and then you can go ahead and start creating and writing your code to make use of your database. So hopefully you get an idea that it's pretty easy to make changes to your existing applications. Okay, now let's go back to the services. Just let's see how our EC2 instance is looking, just to make sure. Go back to EC2 instance. Okay, it's fully up and running. It says 2x2 checks, and we should be good. So let's go back to services. We'll go back to Elastic Beanstalk. Let's go back to my PHP application, added instance to the environment, and some of the details here. We can go back and look at the same information for the Ruby app. Okay, it's still running. It's going to take some more time, guys. So bear with me. We'll leave this running and we'll come back once these applications are fully deployed. Okay, guys, give it some more time. It will be up and running. The status will change to green, and as you can see, warning, it's still transitioning through the different phases. So once that is done, we'll have the our application up and running. As you can see, here you go. So you can see our application was deployed and it's successfully up and running. And we can go to the CURL and then see if we can access our PHP applications or not. And hooray, here we go. So you can see that we have deployed our PHP application, and the only thing we had to do, we just as a developer, they can code. You just went ahead and uploaded the application, and the application, the Elastic Beanstalk on the back end, it took care of everything, launching an EC2 instance, deploying your needed software configuration, and then on top of that, deploying your application. If you want to go ahead and make changes, you can go ahead and upload and redeploy and other things. You can go ahead and change the configuration. And one of the things that we talked about, if you go into configuration tab, so right now when we started, it was a single scale, and now you have made sure that your application is up and running. Everything looks good, and it's time to move into production, where you wants to make sure that it load balance, scale automatically, without a lot of manual work. So simply go ahead and click on the scaling, and there instead of the single environment type from single, just make it to load balance auto scale. We can add even time-based scale if you think these are the peak hours, you can have X number of instances at time. So once you change the load balance auto scale, it says auto scaling and trigger setting will be available after updating the environment type. So once you do that, change it to load balance and auto scale, just simply go ahead and click apply, and it's validating. So now here, pay attention, it says environment type migrating to a load balance environment replaces all your current instance. So this is something you need to pay attention. It's going to replace all your existing environment and it's going to create new ones. So simply go ahead and click save here. Once that is done, give it some time. It's going to rerun the stuff here. And meanwhile, the changes are getting applied to our PHP app. Let's have a look how our app is doing. Okay, we're still waiting for our Ruby app to come up. It's creating right now some instance. It created instance 478, configuring some CloudWatch alarms and all. Let's go back to my PHP app. And as you can say, environment update is starting. Updating environment my PHP's configuration detail. You can go back to the configuration tab, and here you can see the minimum to maximum number of instances, average network hours. So by default, it's configuring based on the network IO, but we will be able to go ahead and make change once our app is again redeployed successfully. So it has created some new security groups and some other details. And go back. Let's go back and have a look on. So now you see when you made the changes to auto scaling, now it's creating load balancer and some of the other things. We can go ahead and verify that thing. So go back to load balancer. If you recall, this is something from our previous lab, the ELB lab. So that's what it's doing. So it's creating an ELB on the back end, and it's going to go ahead and attach some of the instances like my Ruby app. So we're still waiting for the instances to be get associated to this load balancer. But you got the idea that what we did during our auto scaling intro lab, the Elastic Beanstalk is taking care of that automatically. We don't have to create any auto scaling group or any launch configuration or any scaling policy, though you will be able to make changes if you desire so. So as you can see, my PHP app is up and running. Everything looks good. So auto scaling group update progress, resource creation initiated. So give it some more time, guys. But once that is done, you will see that your load balancer is fully up and running. You will have that many number of instances, and here are some of your auto scaling policies, and we'll be able to I'll walk you through some of these policies. So once that is done, so let's wait for some more time here for our PHP app. Okay, so our application is almost deployed. It's just transitioning through some of the different states. Okay, meanwhile, if you can see, our Ruby app is also deployed and everything looks good. And let's go ahead and launch our Ruby app. So let's go ahead and click on the URL. Woohoo! Here we go. So this is our Ruby app, and so as I said, this is making use of the database on the back end. But you get the idea that we didn't have to install any Linux, and we didn't have to install any Ruby. Elastic, Beanstalk took care of everything for us on the back end. Let me just show you the database that I'm using. I'm just entering an email address here, and then simply go ahead and click go and add another email address, test1@test.com. So this is just one of my Ruby app, the sample Ruby app that we're using. So I can use it. And you can see that we are fetching the list of the user subscribed from my database that being utilized by my Ruby app. But you got the idea here. And let's go ahead and see how are we looking on the PHP app. Okay. And as you can see, PHP app also just transitioned the state. Now let's go back and re-access. Okay, we can access our PHP app. Now go back under the configuration tab and you can see the scaling configuration detail here. You can modify your auto scaling configuration based from our previous things that we did during our auto scaling introduction in lab. So you can go ahead and make change again, scaling triggers. You can go ahead and change that. By default, it says the network out. You can change it to CPU utilization, latency, and some of the other things. You can do a time-based scaling also. Add schedule action. So at that particular time, you can have that many number of minimum maximum action, sorry, instances, and occurrence is only one time, or you can have a recurring. So you can go ahead and make the changes that you desire. So under logs, you can fetch a request log from your application. It will take a few minutes, and you will be able to see the logs here. This talks about the health and the instance which is running, some of the other details. Go back to the monitoring tab and you can look the overall, the healthy host count, the CPU utilization, average latency, and based on that, you can tweak your auto scaling policies, or you can see how your application is doing. Maybe you need some more instances and other things, along with the alarms events we just went through. So that's all pretty much, guys. Hopefully, you got a good idea about the Elastic Beanstalk and the use cases around the Elastic Beanstalk, and it's pretty easy to scale your applications once you have decided that everything looks good. You can go ahead and make the changes from load balancing one instance and some of the other areas pretty much. And hopefully, you got a pretty good idea about the Elastic Beanstalk, how to deploy some of the things and making use of and scaling. That was pretty much on this session. Hopefully, you had a good idea around the Elastic Beanstalk. In the next lab, it's going to be primarily a lab. I will not be discussing much the theoretical stuff out there. In the next lab, what I'm planning to do will use the learning from our this lab, Elastic Beanstalk, and I will show you that how we can make use of the Elastic Beanstalk and really integrate with some of the other things. So here we are trying to solve a problem that we have a lot of application or the web applications are running on each EC2 instance, and we want to consolidate many of those applications onto one host, possibly with the help of Docker. So we are planning to do a container for our applications and launch multiple containers within one EC2 instance or multiple. And really, we want to automate that process. So that'll be the whole idea for our next lab. So I will see you guys in the next lab. Thanks. Bye bye.